already off the bat, this question is stressing me out.
Yeah.
It's making me very scared to say something out of my depth.
Welcome to Think Tank with Karan Menon, a show by and for people who do not know things. It's me, Karan Menon, your host, a writer, comedian, but also, and this isn't talked about enough, a simple man searching for answers. On each episode of Think Tank, we invite two people, experts from literally any field, to come together with me as a team to answer just one question. That's the only goal here. Just put our heads together to answer one question about something relevant to the world. And we, including myself, are not going to know this question until it's delivered to us in the episode. So the point is not to be prepared or to know everything. The point is to become comfortable with that experience of trying to figure out what you think with your friends when you don't necessarily have all the answers. So sometimes we're going to know things. Sometimes we're not going to know things. But we're trying our best with the experiences we have. Think Tank is a Citizens Create project made possible by equal citizens. For more information, please visit www.citizenscreate.us. And now for our episode, I'm joined by Mars Wong, a game designer, developer, and creative technologist, and Callahan Teceno, actor and writer. Let's enter the tank.
Cal, introduce yourself. What do you do? What are you an expert at?
Yeah, I'm Cal. I'm an actor, so that means I work in a restaurant. I am an expert. I'm an expert in theory, surviving in the wilderness.
Whoa.
Never done it myself. I watch this guy on YouTube who survives a lot. He does like survival videos, and I've watched thousands of footage of that.
Is
so
it the dad?
Outdoor Boys.
Yeah.
Oh, you both are watching Outdoor
Yeah.
Boys?
Yeah.
Okay, you send me some of these videos
Yeah,
as well.
I think so.
Yeah.
Are we allowed to? Yeah. Talk
Yeah, shout out.
plug them?
Yeah.
Outdoor Boys.
One of the best like content creators I've ever like come across. Just cares only about making like the stuff and like no other fame or anything after that. Yeah.
He just kind of camps out in different...
Yeah, he lives in Alaska and he'll just drive out in the middle of the wilderness, and sometimes he has like a whole setup of like a hot tent if it's like negative 50 degrees. Sometimes he'll just use like sheep like skin to sleep on, and he cooks all these amazing meals and stuff. So in theory, through studying his videos, I feel like I could give it a shot.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh,
All right. Yeah, we'll keep that. We'll leave that there. Mars.
I'm Mars. I'm a game designer. I think I'm kind of an expert in game design and game development, but that seems kind of too try hard. So I think I'm probably also an expert at like Warhammer.
Wait. What is Warhammer, if I may? Can I ask that?
Oh man.
It's in the name, dude.
Yeah.
Is it a game or is it
It's kind of a game.
a weapon? Okay.
For me, it's more of an addiction. It's a miniature game,
Okay.
but you gotta like sort of glue all the guys together and then paint them, and
Oh, it's
they're
a
all like
physical-
this big. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I normally say if you haven't heard of it, just like Google Warhammer Henry Cavill.
Oh.
Because it's like finally we have like a sexy person to talk about it.
Oh. He
yeah.
does it in his free
What do you
time.
mean?
Yeah,
You're-
he's
You're
obsessed.
crushing
Oh,
it right
thanks
now, dude.
so much. Yeah, so Henry Cavill, Henry Cavill, and Gerard Way from My Chemical Romance.
Okay.
Yeah, two celebrity Warhammer aficionados.
So you are recreating scenes of war with the miniatures?
Kind of.
Okay.
It is still a board game.
Oh, no, it's okay. It's a board
but
game.
there's no tiles, and you use like tape measures and like lasers to like detect line of sight. It's like super
This is crazy.
convoluted, but most people don't even get to that because they've got a huge what we call pile of shame, just like a bunch of plastic in a box somewhere that you haven't finished building and painting.
Okay.
That,
So you don't even get to the playing stage
no,
until
yeah,
you have built
I haven't
every
played a
part of
game
this
since
game.
like 2009, probably.
Wow.
Yeah, just painting.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay, so only the elites really even get to play the game.
you could call them elites, I
Yeah.
guess.
Is it just more fun like creating the other-
Oh, I think it is. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. I mean, it's like miniature painting. It's like those guys in like the 50s who were super into like miniature trains.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like that.
Which are objectively amazing.
Yeah, I was gonna say like
Thank
I'm
you.
on it
Yeah.
with that stuff. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Mm.
And also really hard to like, relate with people over.
Oh, yeah.
Because, my girlfriend will come downstairs and she just sees like the all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy
Oh,
type
yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And there's like 1,000 little space marines
Mm. Oh,
on
you
the
can
table.
go to space. There's space versions of it.
Yeah. There's that's the one I'm into.
That is such a. You guys have picked both such specific things, but I'm really happy about that. I feel like there's a lot to go over. First of all, on the miniature side, I feel like if I were to bring my own personal experience to this, I was really maybe this is offensive. I was really into Legos growing up. No, that feels on the same wavelength.
Yeah,
Dude,
okay.
so that's you, man.
Oh, if
I was
I'm like,
I'm so
I
into
did the
Legos.
same thing as you. Like
I
that's
thought
all
you
I'm
were gonna
saying.
be like,
No.
I did Legos, sue me. Like,
After their whole scandal.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Legos, and I was really into Thomas the Tank Engine. So
I can't stop thinking about mini trains now. Like when you were talking and mentioned that, dude, a train entering a cave or something and coming out the other side is the most entertaining thing.
Yeah.
Like Mr. Rogers, you know what I'm talking about?
yeah.
You would have loved the first movie they ever made.
Of Warhammer?
No, just ever.
Oh.
Oh, the first movie that was ever made.
Yeah.
Was that the one with the trains
Just the
coming
train?
at
Oh
you?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Fellas,
Yeah.
we've been shooting the shit. I want to ask you a question. We're about to be working as a team together,
Okay.
solving a problem with it. This is the think tank. We're in the tank right now. We're about to get thinking. Yeah, we're in a tank. Take a good look because you're gonna be here for a while.
Help.
Yeah. How do you feel about being on a team? What does teamwork mean to you? And what environment are you looking for in a good team vibe? That's all one question. Cal.
Oh, okay. I love being a part of a team.
Yeah.
I love being a part of a team. I'm answering all the questions you had.
Yeah.
I have found myself, I've tried individual sports myself, like something like tennis or whatever. And I always find myself, I love being a part of people collectively trying to do something or achieve a goal.
Yeah.
From a comedy standpoint, when I did stand-up, I was like, it was fun, but I remember the first week I did stand-up was the first week I did improv. And I was like, oh, it's like the team like aspect of improv was extremely more profound to me than being alone. Both fun, but there's something about a collective hope to achieve something, which I kind of feed off of. So yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about like sort of individual sports versus team sports, but when I was growing up I did a lot of fencing, which is like a very individual sport. One versus one. There's only enough room on the lane for two people really. And it's like all linear on that one dimension, that one dimensional axis. But I remember there was one time like a little scuffle broke out where all the fencers kind of like dropped their swords and started fighting.
Whoa.
And it was like the
Opposite-
most exciting.
Opposite teams? Or
The team sort of like just ambushed
Without swords.
one of the lanes. Well, the
No, it's
swords
like you have a weapon.
the swords are connected to you by a wire.
Oh.
So but they don't really do a lot of damage. So when you actually want to like grab someone, you just drop it and it starts hanging down here.
Oh,
So everyone's swords are dangling and they're just and it was fun. I was like, we're not alone. And I do personally really like working on teams. I do feel like this is kind of like a job interview type of question.
Yeah.
I know. I love teams.
Yeah.
It's my favorite.
I think my ideas are only good in the context of others.
You're in.
Yeah.
You're out. Teamwork. We're going to be a team, and we're going to be working on specifically a question that has to do with something happening in the world, which can be scary. Personally, for me, that's scary. I feel like there's a lot of pressure these days to act like you know things and act like you know what you're talking about. And I'm just going to come out and say, I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what I'm talking about. And I just want to ask you guys, what is your relationship with the news? How do you consume it? What apps are you on? Do you feel like you know anything? All one question. Cal.
I know everything. I know nothing as well. In terms of news, I definitely stay off of like television news. Obviously, I think our generation gets a lot of it from social media. I do have this guy on Snapchat called Peter Hambley who does a show called Good Luck America. That is, I feel like, very tame and neutral, but also supplying political and just any other kind of news updates, so I'm not like completely out of it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But something like just recently with the fires and everything in LA, so many people back home were texting me because they're watching the news, and I was obviously here in LA, and I was like, "What? I'm fine. Like, don't worry. There's other people who you should be worrying about, you know." And then my TV, I turned off like an exterior app on the TV, and it flipped to this like random news channel, and it was all like the fires and stuff, and I was like, "Oh my god!" It was like eye opening because I haven't watched the news in so long.
Yeah.
So I have a very limited, very filtered version of what goes on, I feel, in the outside world. And then obviously social media is a big thing because nowadays we're like, how trustworthy is this source? And so definitely I get it from random places on the internet. And then I would say having to also question the validity of that once I receive it.
Yeah. Yeah, that is kind of similar to my experience. It's just like I actually never really know if I know most things that are happening, and even the things that are showing up on my feed, I'm like, I don't even know if that's real. Mars, what about you? How do you feel?
I think I know enough to know that I know nothing.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
in that curve of, you know, if you know nothing, you think you know a lot, and then
Yeah.
it drops. I'm in that valley
Okay.
for sure. So I deleted my Instagram and Facebook accounts. I was like done with the doom scroll. I was realizing how many hours I was like losing of my life. And I never had a TikTok, so I was like, I'm done with all of that stuff. And now I spend all my time on Reddit and YouTube Shorts, so it's
Okay.
the same exact
Like the
thing.
same, yeah.
So that didn't help at all. But I will say that I probably spend as much time on like YouTube Shorts doom scrolling as I do doom scrolling on Apple News or New York Times.
Is there a type of new doom scrolling you prefer?
Honestly, it's interesting because I think that the YouTube one gives me existential dread because it does feel like I just wasted all my time. But the news form of that gives me existential dread because I realize that the world is falling apart. So I don't know which one is more psychologically damaging, but neither of them feel good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I'm pretty well informed. I just to give you my like sort of media bias, I am definitely like a skeptic of even reputable news sources.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that I have an alternative like, you know, OAN or whatever it's called. You know, like
Yeah.
I'm not like oh yeah, RT woo, like because CNN sometimes is not correct. I know a lot of people who've worked in like media and all of that, so it's like I don't generally believe there's like a whole conspiracy you know, out to manipulate you, the populace. But I just think that like the more news that you intake from varying sources, a more holistic picture you'll get of what's actually going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
And just like you know, varying sources, like the number of times I've wanted to straight up block Wall Street Journal from ever showing up again, and I don't, because I'm just like, I need to know what the talking points are.
Why do you need to know? Is like to talk to other people about
Yeah,
it?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I'm a relatively combative person.
Okay.
And I also have friends, like I don't really like gatekeep my friendship. Like I am genuinely friends with like 3-time Trump supporters.
Oh, cool. Okay.
I'm friends with, well, not super cool, but
No, I mean, I have friends who are Trump supporters. I feel like
for sure. I have like friends from all over who have very varying viewpoints.
Yeah.
And I find that I actually generally have a lot in common with people who are kind of more reactionary and more sort of polarized than I do with a lot of like sort of neoliberal establishment people.
you have more in common with polarized people. You
Yeah,
said?
yeah, with people with very strong feelings,
Strong
and
opinions. Okay.
strong
Cool.
opinions. Yeah, I generally have a lot in common with them. It's kind of like that meme where you're looking at like, you know, the freeway and it says this one destination, and then there's like the off ramp, and the guy's like
Yeah.
swerving the car onto the off ramp. So that's where I feel like most of my friends and people I agree with go.
Okay.
It's like we'll be talking and we'll be like, well, yeah, I mean the space race, blah 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 blah. You know, the Russians. That's why, and they're like, that's why the moon landing was faked, and I'm like, I mean,
Oh,
oh,
all right. Well, and what was that?
Oh, there's like a noise. And...
There was a bird. Here we go. Here we go. Oh my gosh!
All right, we got our.
I just witnessed 4
you got mail.
backwards throws. Okay.
Yeah, so the envelope has arrived in one swift throw into my hands.
Yep. First try too.
We got our question, guys.
Okay.
Cal,
I'm so scared. Oh my
Mars,
god.
this is the question we're gonna have to have an answer for this by the end of the episode. Would you say the U.S. is a democracy? If no, is it possible? How? And if yes, explain. But let's start with that first. There's a lot of like kind of random other stuff happening after that. But is the U.S. a democracy? Already off the bat, this question is stressing me out.
Yeah.
It's making me very scared to say something out of my depth.
Yeah.
Maybe we can just emotionally process. I feel like when I see the word democracy, but it's would you say the U.S. is a democracy? That's a big question.
Well, should we get a clear definition on democracy?
That's
Is
great.
that
That's
insane to say?
No, that's not insane.
Okay.
That's not insane. I'm glad you're saying
Okay,
that.
cool.
Thank you.
Because that obviously is the defining factor of this question.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Democracy.
yeah.
Love it, hate it. It's here to stay. Some people say it's not. Would you say what is a democracy?
Can we phone a friend?
We could also go around and say like how would we each define democracy?
I like that.
It's I mean, obviously there's probably a straightforward answer, but it's in this day and age maybe a vague enough thing we would all have not 3 different, but
Yeah. I think
Maybe.
we're probably all gonna have. I wonder. Actually, I'm curious. Okay. I can start.
yeah.
From what I've heard, a democracy is a form of government where the people decide who is in power and have representatives that they elect who make decisions on their behalf. That's it. That's all I'm going to say there.
I would argue that's a republic.
Wow. And you know, right away, I don't know what a republic is.
Okay, for
so
sure, for
thank
sure.
you for saying that.
Star Wars
Yes.
for me. That's what I get
The
into.
Yeah, the
Republic.
I think
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
republic.
I'm
I think of outer
It's a
space.
democracy. Sorry.
Yeah, they never say the
That was
democracy in Star Wars. What's the difference between a republic and a democracy?
So, to my understanding, a democracy is a government formed by the people where the people decide the rules or the laws, right? Or they're, they are able to exert their will on the direction of their country directly.
So there's no representative in that definition. It's just people decide.
It seems like it's on some sort of like sliding scale. From what I know, I believe the U.S. is a republic, and that it's supposed to be a republic. At least that's how the framers wanted it to be. That doesn't mean it shouldn't be a democracy, but you'll hear this argument a lot, I feel like, from people when you say, well, it's not democratic. They'll say it's not a democracy and it's not supposed to be.
Oh, people say that.
Yeah.
Some people say that. So
Yeah.
you can be a democracy and a republic, but you can be a republic but not a democracy.
Square rectangle.
It's a square rectangle.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. It seems like we are a democratic republic.
Okay.
Or that's what we're supposed to be.
Democratic Republic.
yeah.
Now that I have seen that phrase before,
Yes.
and not knowing what that means.
Right.
So I'm learning.
Like North Korea.
North Korea is a democratic republic.
What's the Democratic People's Republic
People's Republic.
of Korea? DPRK.
Okay. Oh, that's the full.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's
Um,
yours. That's your definition.
What's your definition?
Of democracy,
Yeah.
my definition would be positions of power are voted in by people, and that vote has equal weight across the board. So everyone's vote has the same exact. I was gonna say potency. That's just crazy.
A great word.
But same, they're all worth the same amount. There is no, if your IQ is higher, you get more votes.
Yeah.
Which would be interesting,
that
actually.
would be a cool way to set up the government.
Don't tell that
If
to
you're
Singapore.
taller, you get a vote and a half,
Yeah.
But yeah, democracy is everyone has equal representation in terms of voting people into power, and also voting in not just people in power, but voting laws into place as well. Which is, well, once again, like, it's a vague thing.
Yeah.
And the question is the United States, what is it again? Is the United States a democracy?
Is the U.S. Would you say the U.S. is a democracy? And then there are follow-ups, but we can start with that first one, I guess, because it's basically yes or no, and then based on that, we have more to answer. But
I have a gut reaction to it, which is no, not because it's like, as I think it's such a complex thing to just, like, it's too simple. Like, the United States can't just be it's like, is the United States a good country? And it's like,
yeah,
that's such a complex and nuanced thing to answer. And it's like, what we should tackle first is like, what is the definition of democracy? But yeah, my gut reaction is no, not directly because I'm like, oh, because all of our votes don't count the same. I mean, partially maybe, but it's also kind of too simple of a thing to describe the United States as.
It's like that democracy is like a perfect ideal that nothing can truly be,
Yeah.
maybe. But what would, maybe one question to ask is like, what would fall, even if what would fall under the realm of like close enough to a democracy? And then I have a lot of questions. One question is that, and then I guess another is like, if we're not a democracy, what are we? What are the other options, maybe?
Well, the main thing in terms of just voting in presidential elections, I'll say with the democracy, because that's kind of like the big issue we can kind of bring it to, is the electoral college. I'm like, how, maybe I don't know much, but I'm like, how can we be a democracy when we also have an electoral college with, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where there's kind of like a fail safe.
Yeah. Where there's like the people who are delegates for you who just decide what they
Yeah.
want. Yeah. That's definitely one option.
Yeah.
We can make a list. Okay, here, I'm going to
Oh
pass
yeah,
around.
we should. Oh yeah, give me some paper.
Oh, this is why we have this. Okay.
Nice.
Yeah, take one, pass it down.
Pass it
I'm
down.
just gonna write down democracy.
Oh.
Thank you.
Democracy.
Thank you. Okay. Big letters. Okay.
Democracy.
Um.
So I like, you said gut reaction no. I'm also kind of gut reaction no. I feel like we were maybe set up to be, but things have happened. You don't even think we
I
were
disagree.
set up to be.
Yeah, I don't think we were ever supposed to be a democracy. I think we were supposed to be a constitutional republic,
Okay.
which we. It's debatable whether or not we are now. That's
Good, right?
yeah, that's pretty good. Texas and California are really close.
Yeah.
To us.
So, can you define what? Sorry, republic of what
a
is it?
constitutional republic. So we have like a constitution that everyone like is pledging their support to.
Yeah.
Right. That can be amended by our legislative body, and then the legislative body is elected to represent us through democratic means. But the reason why I would say that I don't think the U.S. has ever been a democracy or was supposed to be is because I think that the U.S. was kind of founded on compromise with slave states. So we have, the Senate, which is just 2 senators per state, which obviously is not direct representation or proportional representation.
Yeah.
It's almost a bigger issue than the Electoral College.
The Senate.
Yeah, it disproportionately sort
Also
of.
Star Wars.
Yeah.
That also exists.
Palpatine is
Yeah.
the Senate.
And he was the problem in that movie.
Yeah. So yeah, this is getting back to Star Wars Minute just already. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Is Star Wars a democracy?
it starts as a republic, and then we'll be talking about the old republic or Star Wars. But yeah, I think that like this concept that we have 2 senators from each state is indicative of the fact that we wanted to support states regardless of how much population they had and how much of their population were slaves.
Yeah. So
which has also gone into the House of Representatives, which is supposed to be by population, is not totally by population.
Oh, that's not either.
It's not proportional. It's not like there's a minimum number of representatives every state gets, and then it's not directly proportional. It's and then also the fact that those were awarded on a 3/5 basis for every enslaved individual. So that disenfranchisement also leads to it not being a democracy, and those are things that weren't changed after the Civil War. So I would argue it's never been a democracy.
Or even
it was,
meant to be a
It was not supposed
democracy.
to. It was supposed to be white male landowners who, had representatives who were other richer white male landowners, and that now we're kind of like just hot fixing it. We're trying to just like put on patches and be like, oh look, now it's like a little bit more like a democracy. But that's not. We're not even actually succeeding in that. It's becoming less and less of a democracy, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So so where did the idea of this even being a democracy? Is that what you're gonna say? Like,
I was gonna ask, like, in your opinion, with that and with the idea that that's how the country started and everything. Do you believe then the idea of democracy is this nationalist campaign to get people to buy in, to be like, we're all working together, but to actually be feeding the pockets of like the wealthy people who are benefiting off of the system that was set up?
That's definitely an interesting point. I think that the desire for democracy has been a huge part of American culture since its inception. And I'm not like a huge history buff, so I can't be like, well, Benjamin Franklin wrote that, like I don't actually know. But I think that there's been a desire for it to become a real democracy for a long time. I don't know when that really started, or when we started having this misconception that it's supposed to be a democracy, just because. Because if it's not in the Constitution, then it's not going to become a democracy just because. We have to make it a democracy. And I think the problem is right now we have way more powerful interests who are motivated to make it less of a democracy. And then everybody who actually wants it to be a democracy are kind of just sitting around on their hands being like, why isn't it a democracy?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it seems like we have landed on our first answer, which is we would say the U.S. is not a democracy. And the reasons for that are it wasn't intended to be one when it started. Not everybody was included in the beginning when it was. So that's, I guess, the definition. Even now we got the Senate, which isn't quite proportional. And also
Electoral
college. And so if our answer is no, then the question is democracy possible and how? And that maybe gets to these kind of special interests or these obstacles we have in the way of it.
I think this is like the spiritual part of this question of like, why live life if you don't think like there is a positive outcome, like why?
I like where this is going.
Do you guys know Pascal's wager?
I've heard of him and his wager, but
yeah.
I don't know what he said.
It's this idea of God and like this wager of like there is really almost nothing to gain from like basically a negative attitude. Not that you need to believe in a God or be part of a church in any way, but the idea that like there's no point in trying because we've already failed is like such a negative way to live your life. Even if you're wrong, it's probably going to be better to spend your time being almost like a hopeful idiot, which I know may sound a little stupid, but I think no to the first question and then hopefully, yes to the second, the follow-up, because I think a lot of people our age are so politically engaged, and it's because their hopes are to make this country a more democratic institution or try to make it more of a fair and equal, almost egalitarian society, which, you don't want to live your life being like, it's already fucked, we're done. You know what I mean? So at least that's my kind of take on that follow-up question.
Yeah, that you have to believe it's possible in order to...
And it's not even from a logistical standpoint of like, we're going to make it. Like you said, like we'll amend it, we'll put in the amendments. It's like almost from a spiritual standpoint. It's like, do you want to live your life that way thinking we're screwed? I mean, at least if you're, a U.S. citizen for the time being, or like, obviously now with presidential elections, there's always this talk of like, I'm moving to Canada. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, there is this philosophical kind of spiritual element to that question of how you want to perceive your life to be. Is there an end goal? Is there not? But yeah, so I'll let you guys talk. I don't know.
I have a follow-up to that, which is that I very much think of that like on a spiritual level quite frequently. My personal belief is that we're not in base reality. Like I don't like people are like, oh, we're living in a simulation or something, and I think the answer to that is probably yes. But it doesn't
VR
affect
stuff.
the
Alright,
way
the
I
VR.
live my life
Yeah.
because so what, you know?
Oh, so you believe that, but it doesn't affect.
But
the
I'm
way
an
you live your life.
optimist.
Okay.
So I think that that's kind of like there's a misconception that if you think like, oh, we're not going to achieve a democracy, so like we should be sad about that. Is like, well, no, we might not achieve a democracy, but we might achieve something else that's good or better than what we have now.
Yeah.
So I think that there's like a semblance of like sort of like realism or optimism that you can still garner if you believe that we're either in a simulation. Like you don't have to regress to nihilism just because of the statistical impossibility that you get what you want.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that. Well, I guess this is like the whole question. I do think it's possible that we're going to get a democracy. I don't think it's likely that we're going to get it the way we think we're going to get it, like just by trying harder, you know?
You think something else will have to happen
Yeah,
that we just can't foresee right now? Or
Well, there's this whole like sort of theory of accelerationism that you hear a lot of like fringe right-wing people talk about.
Yeah.
They're like this group of people who describe themselves as accelerationists. A lot of them are like neo-Nazis or they're like anarchists or whatever, but they believe that we need to have a civil war as soon as possible, or we need to have a world war as soon as possible, or we need to just like sort of descend into anarchy as soon as possible so that something good can come out of that. Now, I disagree with pretty much every accelerationist I've talked to because their end goal is, generally speaking, even more horrifying than the in-between part. Everyone I've spoken to who's like, oh yeah, I believe we need a race war. Like their solution, like what that's going to provide is, generally speaking, not actually a utopia.
Yeah,
they're
it's
like
just something different.
They're like,
but
I
it's
need a
not-
race war so that we can finally have real fascism. You know what I mean? Like
Okay.
it's
They're
not
just, like,
actually.
bored.
Yeah,
They're
it's
like, let's get another
it's like they
war
believe
going.
in accelerationism because I think they have discovered something that I think more and more, I don't want to say normal people, but just like more level-headed and empathetic people are starting to realize, which is that the institutions are not necessarily built in a way to give us the positive sort of experience that we want out of life. And so for those people, when they want radical change, which I also personally want from the other direction, probably, they want radical change, and the institutions are built to stagnate that radical change. Like there are checks and balances and all of that. And I think what we're finally starting to see in this current administration is an attempt to sort of trample those institutions and trample those checks and balances. And we're seeing them kind of get away with it, which in a weird, backwards way gives me hope.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
In an accelerationist mind point.
Where
But
it's just like something new is going to come at least,
just
but it's
the
like
fact that they're able to get new things to happen, which is horrifying, you know?
that's
It's-
yeah, it is a crazy yeah.
It's like we're in this Weimar Republic, like pre
Oh god.
pre bad guy Germany,
Yeah.
where it's like kind of chaos and the institutions are like, oh, don't, communism's bad, like, and the institutions will kind of prop up fascists, to keep the growing populism down. They will prop up whoever it takes to preserve the institutions. And then they found out, eventually that the people they were propping up are the most dangerous, and they destroyed the institutions.
You think that is going to happen here?
Yeah.
That what happened in Germany is going to happen here?
Oh, I think that's a possibility.
It's a possibility.
Yeah. I don't think it's a certainty, but I think it's like it's very much a possibility.
It is scary. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Not to sound too libbed up or anything.
No, I mean,
I'm not just
go
going
all
off,
the way. Yeah.
going off.
You said something, I don't know if we were recording or it was pre or, but you said something that was kind of ties back into the spiritual philosophical aspect of the question of, you said, the only thing I know is I know nothing, which I think is a really strong approach to something like this question. Saying something like, bringing back to the question, the U.S. is a democracy, saying something like, no, it can never be, is kind of a wrong answer because time is infinite for all we know. So it's like there is no point in saying something is a definite. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a hopeful maybe is, I feel, the only. I guess there's
Yeah.
no right answer, but that seemed, because if you're like, oh yes, of course, it's like, well, like we also defined, it's like, in what way will we get democracy? Because as you mentioned, it's like it's not the way. we
Yeah, well,
think.
that was the final part of it was if no, is it possible? And then if we're saying like it is possible, then the last follow up is like how. And it seems like where at least you're going with that is like we don't really know how, or like one way is one answer to that is that we just don't know, or that it could, or another answer is by keeping up like some form of like hope or like optimism.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really funny, like our varying like answers, because it kind of brings it back to like what we do. Like you're coming from such an analytical design aspect, which is probably more accurate, and I'm like coming from the kind of imaginative side where I'm
Actor.
like, honestly, yeah, I'm like, if we just love each other, like, but I will say to that, how I think also to even try to put it into analytical logistical terms is almost impossible because of how complex and nuanced it is. So I'm like, I'm going to answer it the simple question with a simple answer, like collective hope is at least my like corny kind of actor answer to how we will bring a democracy to the United States, because collective empathy is, as corny as it sounds, can be pretty strong. And if
Yeah.
we all are caring about each other, I think certain things can be achieved that our mind can't even comprehend at this point. But once again, very
Yeah, no. Do you? I
childish
mean, are
answer.
you like an optimistic person in general in life, or is
So
it?
funny. Like I think yes, I think internally, like actually almost the opposite. Like I'm very which is hilarious. Like I hold myself to just way too high of standards and stuff. We don't need to get into that, but like but I think when it comes to things like this, especially big political hot button issues, I've had so many arguments over the years with friends, family members, especially people who you have differing, political stuff. And the only thing that I feel is not the right answer, but it is more of like a thing at least we can agree on is like, if we care about one another, and because any political movement that is, moved or pushed by hate or disagreeing with something because of something that is out of that thing's control, is not moving in an empathetic way. So honestly, that is what I've dealt with over the year. I mean, pretty young, but going to Catholic school and not being Catholic, I feel like every time I'm in an environment where I have differing opinions, where from the outside I really disagreed with, and then excuse me, interacted with these people, I'm like, okay, like we're all people, honestly, at the end of the day. And this is another actory thing that's annoying. I did a monologue this morning of Cassius from Julius Caesar. He has this monologue, at least in my opinion. I know there's Shakespeare nerds out there who are very opinionated on this stuff. Cassius, have you guys read Julius Caesar?
I have actually.
Okay, cool. Caesar is, he is overthrown during this play, and Cassius kind of leads this mutiny in its way. But in this monologue, he says this thing like, he is a man. We're men. He's not some god. And I think that with our people and our politicians, it's like we need to hold them to be just a human, not some deity we've made to think that they need to make all our decisions for us.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, and to end this weird, I think like that hopeful, that collective hope of, we're all human, we should all be empathetic towards one another. A maybe is probably better than a definite no, in my opinion.
It's infinitely better.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
mathematically.
Yeah, exactly.
Mathematically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, just maybe
Going
is better than a no in general.
From 0 to
Yeah.
0.001% is.
I feel like as a team, if that's where we want to go with it, I'm very happy with that. If this is the group that decides if democracy is possible.
Yeah.
So we have like 3 questions in there then.
We have 3. Yeah. So would you say the U.S. is a democracy? We said
No.
A resounding.
we all said no together. If no, is it possible? Maybe.
Maybe. And then how?
And then how? Good vibes.
Well, I think we had two very different.
Yeah,
No,
answers.
you had different. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was one is by being more
Collective hope, I
empathy
say.
and hope, and yours was
You're the rebellion. You know.
yeah.
Mine's definitely a little more depressing to think about. But
yeah.
I just think we keep looking. If you look back, like historically, at every administration that we've had on the federal level, executive branch, that you kind of see these parallels where like the Democrats kind of say, "Hey, we should do these things," you know.
Yeah.
I think that maybe we should all have hope for change, you know. And
That's good.
then the next guy comes in and he's like, actually, I think that
was also
This is
you
crazy.
know,
This is crazy.
and he's-
You
and-
just summed up the whole
yeah,
Pull this
political
out
climate.
earlier. Yeah.
I think he's a loser, and then he basically gets rid of all the stuff that the other guy did.
Yeah.
And then when the Democrats come back into office, they don't reinstate all of the good things they were doing. They just prevent it. It's called like the ratchet theory, where if you think of like a gear with two different shaped teeth, you know, you've got like sort of rounded teeth on one end and then a sharp sort of vertical line on the other. It's like a ratchet. So
Yeah.
it is allowed to turn in one direction, but then it's not
Oh yeah.
allowed to turn back in the other one. And so this keeps getting thrown around my circles
Damn.
about how the Democratic establishment is this sort of controlled opposition party, where they're supposed to say they're supposed to be the ratchet that stops it from sort of regressing, or in our case progressing. And then when the Republicans come in, they're allowed to move the country further to the right. And then Democrats come back in and they say, okay, well, we need to put in the most, you know, establishment friendly candidate who's going to keep our country from sliding.
Yeah.
And then the Republicans come in to destroy a few more norms, and then the Democrats come back and say, okay, well, now this is where we are.
Okay, so the
Right.
Democrats aren't like destroying anything or moving in the other direction. They're just
They're
keeping
just
it where
keeping
it is.
everything the same for 4 years until the resentment and anger grows among the people
And then
whose
it goes-
lives are getting worse. And so
Mhm.
then they say, well, if the Democrats aren't going to do anything, we're going to vote for the people who are going to actually change things.
Okay.
And now I think that they're changing things for the worse, but they are changing things. And I think that, you know, just having more Democrats in office, all that does is it makes left-leaning policies look bad.
So at this point in where we are in the discussion, it feels like there's two very opposite things being said in the
Yeah,
tank,
yeah.
which as a team we're gonna have to
Yeah.
We
for
gotta-
sure.
we're gonna have to
Yeah.
lock in and
We
find
need the feel
Well,
good
do you
moment.
have on base, especially those last two, because we definitely agree on the first one.
yeah.
What's your personal take? I know you're the host, but what's your personal take on like the how and
Yeah.
is it possible?
Is it possible? I feel like my gut is to say it's possible, but when I actually analyze that, I can't tell if I'm just saying that because I just need it to be possible or if I actually have anything to back that up. But I feel to your point, like I kind of do love just believing that things are possible. But I feel like when you come up against someone who starts throwing facts at you and is like, well, actually, it's very categorically false that it is possible because of X, Y, Z, and you should feel, you know, like shit. Then it's like, I cave very quickly to people like that. So then it's like, do I have any real opinions? Am I a person?
Well, you need some of Cal's sort of advice.
I need some
which
Cal
is
advice. I was
to
actually
not
really-
fold.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's possible. And then when it comes to how, I'm like, yeah, I think I have stopped believing that like one person can like change everything. I think there's like a belief on social media that like one person, you can like single-handedly change things by like posting the right thing or like I like built up a following specifically in my like TikTok era, like making videos where I had people like in my comments being like, you're like, you are changing the world. Like they'd be like, this is amazing. Like there was a point where like I maybe I've talked to you about this, but like I would get to a point making these videos where like I didn't even choose what my next topic was. My followers would choose for me, where they'd be like, do one on the thing happening there, do one on the fucking genocide that happened there. And then I would like have my video, which would have like a take, but it would really just be the take that I was expected to have, kind of, even though I would do a lot of research. And then I got to a point where like people got really angry at me when I didn't have something to say. Like I posted a picture of myself. I was like, hey, I have a stand-up show this Thursday. And some guy commented like, what the fuck is this bullshit? It was like, the people of Palestine need you right now. And I was like, that's where I was like, I think I got too big ahead at one point where I thought that I had too much like solo power. Like, even though I was trying to not get a big head about it. And I was also making all these videos basically by myself, with the help of like like 1 or 2 camera people. I was like writing them myself for most of that time. So it was a very like solo endeavor and a very lonely endeavor. And then I like kind of went the opposite way for a while, where I was like, people who are super like, who think everything is possible are like dumb and like are like naive. And now I'm kind of in the middle where I'm like, I actually have no idea like where I am. It's weird.
Yeah, I don't want to. I want to go off a bunch of stuff you said. Yeah, this idea of that collective hope, I don't want it to come off as like, blissful ignorance. Like when people are like, well, there's still stuff and action to be had. And it's like, if you're just like, no, everything will be okay. You know what I mean? Like that's not really what I'm saying. But also going back to just the content creation, especially, in this day and age. I know it probably was like overwhelming when they're like, you're changing. I don't think it's the opposite though at all. I think it was like watching that, and especially knowing you before and after, it was really inspiring and cool to see you actually give your own personal takes, because you were kind of selling your own personality, and which was, as a friend of yours, I was like, this is awesome. You know what I mean? And it's like, I would buy that. But when it came to like the ideas of people being like, you have to do this, or why aren't you talking about this? That brings it back to, like I said, about being like a human. It's like, you're one guy. It's like, you can't have a take on everything. And a lot of us can be really educated on some things and be really stupid in other. And we should just have a baseline of like, not knowing is okay to start, and then collectively progressing and educating yourself on that topic. But to demand it immediately is so unfair.
Yeah.
And to blame someone also for silence is kind of unfair, because you're like, hold on, let me take my time maybe educating myself or personally addressing it myself, how I feel about it.
Yeah.
So that's why I have like kind of like a lukewarm take on this, where I'm like, it's such a, this is a question we could study our entire lives trying to answer. And so coming up with like a foolproof plan, it'd be really difficult.
Yeah.
So it goes back to that, demanding, you to have a take on something, where it was also now changing your take on it, because you're like, oh, this person was telling me what was going on. Yeah. Anyway,
I like that you actually experienced you're not allowed to not have a take.
Yeah. I did.
Or in your case as well, you're not allowed to do other stuff. Yeah. You're only allowed to talk about scary, horrible things that are happening in the world.
It is weird. It was weird. It was like I became like an outlet for certain people for their like hopelessness, and then when I didn't provide that anymore, they were like, who like I think there's a lot of people who see what's happening in the world and don't know what to do about it. And so then they see certain people with like platforms where they can like reach through a DM, and they feel like that's how they can do something about it. Like, I tell you to do something about it, then I've done something about it.
They were like, you were my hopelessness dealer.
Yeah, exactly.
And now you're trying to peddle me hope.
Exactly. Exactly.
You got me hooked.
And do you think them like liking and engaging with your post, they felt like they were like, I did my duty to engage in that effort? Do you think that's what that was? Yeah, exactly.
That's really
I reposted it.
I felt like I was just giving people like ammunition to post, and then feel like they were done thinking about the thing.
Yeah.
And I think that social media makes people think that they're doing something when they're not. And so a lot of the time I'm like, what is the point of doing anything? Or I'm like, that's why you can't tell. You just can't tell what other people's experience of social media even is, because you're just literally, you think you're experiencing everybody, but it's really just a very personal and like solo thing you're doing.
Yeah.
So I think like this kind of stuff is possible, but it really does require like talking to people like in person.
Yeah.
And coming up with some collective ideas and not trying to like sell those ideas immediately to make yourself look cool, which is like really where I think stuff just kind of stops, where it's like, as soon as you come up with some idea I don't know if I'm ranting. I'm rambling right now, but
keep
yeah.
going.
No, people,
yeah.
people don't want to actually do direct action. You know, people don't want to go canvassing for
Yeah.
some candidate that they know is gonna lie through their teeth at something, but they're better than the other guy.
Yeah, that's
You
like
know,
not a sexy.
They'd
like,
rather
thing to
point
do.
at everybody and be like, "Look at all these hypocrites and liars," which is what
Exactly.
I'm doing right now. I'm just like,
Yeah, and you can get a lot of like airtime doing stuff like that, and you can
Right.
feel very productive, or that you're like saving democracy in something
Yeah.
where you're like, So yeah, I would say I agree. I think it is possible, but it's just not going to happen in the way that I think things are set up currently to make you think it will happen. Have we hit like have we hit on everything that needs to be said?
Based
how-
off the reactions, they
You guys haven't really talked about what the U.S. is, what you would classify the current.
Oh shit! I guess we haven't. I mean, we said like it's a republic, but what is it? What would we? Yeah, what is happening right now?
I think it's very clear that we are living in an oligarchy
we
right now.
you can do everyone.
Everybody.
Just,
So oligarchy is actually how you would define
Oligarchy.
How the
I mean, that's how Mr. Sanders would describe us. I think that that's pretty accurate.
I kind of agree with
I
him.
would say
I
me
like
too.
corporate neo-tech fascism. I don't
Yeah.
know, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it does feel like people with money run things, and the more Elon Musk, I haven't really even been keeping up with everything he's been doing because it just feels like that will lead to some kind of mental disorder. But he does do a lot.
Speaking from experience, it does.
Yeah, it's okay.
He's
yeah,
the
very much
richest
it
person in the world. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Yes.
I get the bubble right here and fact check that because
Is Elon Musk the richest person in the world?
because
Uh,
I think I looked up recently like who is the richest and like I'm pretty sure he's number one, which is kind of insane.
In terms of above the board money, yeah.
Yeah.
So, there are
Yeah.
a lot of people who say like Vladimir Putin's technically the richest man in the world because
interesting.
he owns
He
the
owns a country.
collective oligarchs
Yeah.
of his
The
country.
only reason I say that is because he's such like a prominent figure, and it's usually like we don't really know who like something like Vladimir. Well, I guess we
Right.
know him too; he's a prominent figure. But like, there's always some person where like, oh yeah, like this millionaire
Right.
billionaire you've never heard of.
Yeah.
But it's so funny because the amount of money he have is almost equal to the amount of like FaceTime we get of this guy too.
yeah.
He's Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
And he is Lex Luthor. We're all just chill with it, you know? It's like, oh, Lex Luthor is going to take a look around our taxes. And
Yeah.
just poke around a little bit.
This year, I have felt more and more like an ant, if that makes sense. Or like the kind of power that this guy has, and he's like
supposed to
plugged into the government.
Yeah.
And the things I hear that like, oh, we're just scrapping education. Like they'll just say something. I mean, that's not what they said, but like Department of Education is gonna go.
Scrapping education, guys.
They'll say something like that in a very like casual way, and I feel like I'm getting like I'm a very small person this year specifically.
Well, I think as you mentioned, like an oligarchy can make that's what it makes people feel like. I mean,
Yeah.
that they're not really contributing to what's
Yeah.
going on. So as mentioned, yeah, I guess the U.S. we've kind of defined what it isn't. Is that what they said? But
Yeah.
yeah,
It's not a democracy, and we say what it is would be closer to an oligarchy.
Oligopoly.
Oligopoly
I
with
don't know.
some tech elements in there.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
tech-
This is like
tech
in the most
fashion.
simple terms. Too.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Obviously, there's a million answers.
It's
to what it could
supposedly a republic.
be. Yeah.
A
supposedly,
constitutional republic is what it technically is. But I think
technically, okay.
I forgot who it was. I don't have my sources. Maybe I could use a spinner at some point.
Hey, it's Karan here, popping in to introduce a tool we're about to be using on the tank, the spinner. So obviously in Think Tank, you can't look stuff up. That's the whole point. But if you really get stuck and you really need to look stuff up, we decided that you don't get to choose the search engine for your question. So you're going to have to spin the spinner to randomly determine the source that you have to use to ask your question. So that could end up being Reddit, that could be ChatGPT, that could be Truth Social. We don't know what it's going to be. That's the cost. Yeah, you have a question, that's the cost. Only one source gets to be used per question. Let's see how it gets used here. I'm assuming it's about to be used in the episode, which is why this is getting inserted in. I'm not in. This is me not in. I'm in my closet right now, but I hope that you're feeling nice and comfortable wherever you are. I'm feeling good in here.
Okay. Yeah, we're gonna be asking: Is it possible for the United States to be a democracy?
We're gonna okay.
One. And one entails the computer.
Oh, one. One is Google headlines.
Oh boy.
So you just Google it, and you just can only read the headlines.
All right. Well,
Wow, that was fast.
I need the Wi-Fi.
Oh
Do
shit!
you want to do it on your phone? Maybe.
I'll do it. Yeah, I can do it on my phone.
Unless we want the laptop for cool optics of like nerd. I'm
I'm
breaking
in.
into the mainframe.
I'm in.
I have the headlines. Can the United States be a democracy?
Was it Can?
Is it
Will it?
possible? Will
Yeah, yeah.
Is it
can.
possible?
Is that okay? That's what we're gonna ask.
Is
We're gonna
it
see what the
possible?
opinions are.
And we're not allowed to click.
I gotta hold on. Correct. Okay. Well, there is a.
Oh yeah, do we get to use the AI?
Yeah, there's like an
overview?
AI.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we should. What does the AI overview
That's
say?
dystopian.
Everyone behind the camera is like, oh god, we just broke out. That was the-
Yeah.
Well, I'll give what it shows up. I mean, we can
Yeah,
see.
yeah.
The Constitution established the United States as a democratic republic. So intentionally.
That was really good.
It is democratic because the people govern themselves. It is a republic because the government's power is derived from its people. This means that our government, federal, state, and local, is elected by the citizens,
Okay.
which I feel like is in theory definition.
That's the theory. That's not the what's happening.
The other headlines are: Is the U.S. a democracy? Yes, but it's more complicated than ...
That's great. That's what we were saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Who said that? What, the
We're
Guardian?
spot on.
We the veterans.
We the veterans.
Yeah,
Okay.
we the veterans.us. .us is
Okay, so we're in line with the veterans
okay.
of the U.S.
Google headlines: Center for American Progress.org. .org is always, official. An American democracy built for the people. That isn't really.
That doesn't say anything really.
We got: Is the United States a democracy or republic? Which is kind of something we covered. Are we able to read the subheadings right under? Okay. Is the United States a democracy or republic? Yes, the United States is a democracy since we, the people, hold the ultimate political power. We're not a direct democracy, but we are a representative ...
Probably democracy.
That's from
Ooh,
Represent Us.
The New Yorker right under it. American democracy was never designed to be democratic.
Whoa.
American government has never been a government by the people, in quotes. This is so despite the fact that more Americans are voting than ever before.
Now you can see who I've been reading.
Yeah.
with.
Yeah. Hey, the New Yorker.
They got great cartoons.
This
They do.
question's annoying. NPR. It says, is America a democracy or a republic? Yes, it is.
Ah.
It has to. Okay. Anyway, so, a lot of those things that in the Google headlines were very much what we were talking about.
That which actually feels pretty good
Mhm.
to see that, because we kind of were just going for it
Yeah.
and we lined up.
And it seems like the overall answer is no, it wasn't intended to be, and ideally it would be, and what was the third part? We would
How?
hope for it to be.
Yeah. And it'll be in a way that we don't.
Can even understand or know.
Seems
it.
it kind of in theme.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
we don't.
We don't know.
Which,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Well, I've been Mars, and I don't know.
Mars doesn't know. You're
I thought you were saying your last name. I'm Mars, and I was like, I'm Teceno. I don't know. I'm Cal, and I guess, I struggle with knowing.
you would say depression. My name's Karan, and I don't know a thing.
Hey, but we all tried,
yeah.
Sorry, I don't mean to continue, but
No, I felt like that. I feel like my mood at the end of this episode is simultaneously sad and happy.
yeah,
Yeah.
which is life.
Which is life. So yeah, our final answer. Would you say the US is a democracy? No.
No.
If no, is it possible? Yeah.
Yes.
maybe.
Yes / maybe.
Well, I guess possible. Would be-
Possible, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
How? We
don't
don't
know.
Or not in the way it is
Not
ideally
how
intended.
you think.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Double.
Not that way.
Yeah,
It's not
double.
what you're thinking.
Yeah. It'll be in a weird way, dude. Like
Yeah.
crazy.
It'll be cool.
Yeah.
Cal, Mars,
Mars.
Karn. Thank you for being on this podcast.
Dude, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
This was a ride. I don't know how much time has passed.
Yeah. In the tank, time doesn't really exist.
In the tank, it's just you and your thoughts
Mhm.
and some lights and a lot of fake plants.
Mhm.
I really had a good time.
Yeah.
It was
too.
cool meeting
Yeah.
you today. I met you for the first time.
Yes.
Yeah, it was cool.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Here.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Getting on the mic.
Thank you guys.
Yeah. Thank you. I hope it was satisfactory.
Thank you. This has been Think Tank.
Good night.
Goodbye. Good night.
We are the Think Tank, and this is our answer.
That's it for this episode of Think Tank. Thank you for watching. Think Tank is brought to you by Equal Citizens, a nonprofit with the mission to fix democracy by establishing truly equal citizenship. More information at equalcitizens.us. If you have a question you'd like to ask the tank, please submit your question to our Citizens Create page at citizenscreate.us. Think Tank is an Ajax Inc. production with production services provided by Matchbook Pictures, sound equipment provided by YJ Gold. Our executive producer is Ann Hamilton. Think Tank is produced by Vivian Gray. Writer is Samantha Lee. Our director of photography is Laura Muhlenweg. Our gaffer is John Laverman. I'm Karan Menon. You can find me on social media at the Karan Menon, and I'll see you on our next episode.
Hi everyone, it's unfortunately me again, Vivian, producer of Think Tank, here for another fact check, quote unquote, and I have an arguably worse setup than last time, but I am going to try and keep this one a bit shorter, try and keep it to 10 minutes, which means we'll be going through this more like a survey. And a few disclaimers as last time. Think Tank is a Citizens Create project, and Citizens Create is brought to you by Equal Citizens. So this is not an official document by Equal Citizens, but rather defined as a casual, personal research project conducted by myself, at least for this episode. So it's subject to all my own biases and perspective. So let's get into it. All right, let's dive in here at the top of the episode. A few fun things. Outdoor Boys, verified. Go check it out. Please forgive me. I will correct this in the official show notes. I did misspell Gerard in Gerard Way here. My apologies. That will be corrected. But he and Henry Cavill are, in fact, fans of Warhammer. And please note the differences in Warhammer Fantasy versus Warhammer 40K. Very interesting stuff. Fact number 7. I'm skipping ahead here. There's a lot here. It's starting to get into the meat of the conversation. I won't go through all the quotes, but basically everybody's sharing their own definition of what a democracy is. Mars brings up the concept of, he argues that, the United States is a republic based on that definition. And so we then get into what is the difference between a republic and a democracy, and how do we see that in the United States structure. So between all these sources, the best way I can summarize this, because there is an infinite amount of interpretation and debate, is that there is much overlap in definitions of democracy and republic, especially in terms of its interpretation in the US government. In summary, there has always been and will continue to be a great amount of debate. Many scholars explain that the framers created the Constitution as a federal and constitutional republic. For example, just looking up United States form of government, the immediate Google things that pop up are federation, presidential system, constitutional republic, federal republic. So again, all to say, many ways to look at it. But again, kind of the whole point of this conversation is exploring that debate and that overlap. Fact number 11 is another core part of the conversation here, and I will take you through a few points in these quotes. Please go read the full thing. But Mars says, "The reason why I don't think the US has ever been a democracy or was supposed to be is because I think that the US was kind of founded on compromise with slave states. So we have the Senate, which is just 2 senators per state, which is obviously not direct representation or proportional representation. I think this concept that we have 2 senators from each state is indicative of the fact that we wanted to support states regardless of how much population they had and how much of their population were slaves, which has also gone into the House of Representatives, which was supposed to be by population, is totally not by population." Skipping ahead here, and then there's also the fact that those were awarded on a 3/5 basis for every enslaved individual. So that disenfranchisement also leads to it not being a democracy. It goes without saying that there is much to expand upon in terms of the systemic injustices perpetuated by the decisions made in our country's founding and drafting of our Constitution. For the sake of the episode, I wanted to provide just a bit more context about what was specifically referenced, i.e., the compromise, the Great Compromise, and the 3/5 compromise itself. This quote is a bit lengthy, so bear with me. The Great Compromise settled the controversy between the large and the small states by providing that the House of Representatives would be apportioned based on population, while the states would be equally represented in the Senate. Debate persisted over how to count the slave population when apportioning representatives. Southern states wanted to count the total slave population, while northern states did not want to count any slaves in making the apportionment. Another compromise determined that 3/5 of the total slave population should be counted in apportioning both representatives and direct taxes. The convention agreed to hold a national census every 10 years that would be used in determining the apportionment for the following 10 years. The 3/5 clause provoked debate during the year-long struggle over the ratification of the Constitution. Its impact was felt not only in the House of Representatives, but also in determining the number of presidential electors each state would have in the Electoral College. Lastly here, while the 3/5 compromise may have been repealed, its legacy can still be seen today. In 1787, counting slaves was what slavers wanted because this resulted in higher power in Congress. Today, the opposite phenomenon can be seen. Black Americans want to be counted, but several states, especially those in the South, create obstacles to keep them from being represented in Congress, including gerrymandering, voter suppression, and a lack of diversity in census data. Ultimately, white politicians are still benefiting from the underrepresentation of Black residents in the United States. So, again, we are still seeing the effects of this today, and it impacts many facets of our government and representation, to say the least. There's no time to do any of these facts justice, but especially in terms of just the amount of what we pulled here, I encourage you to go and look through that on your own. I'm jumping to fact 14 because I feel like when Mars is talking about the theory of accelerationism, that it could be beneficial to break down why that concept is used for many instances and can be misinterpreted. The best quote I found in terms of explaining this, diversity of application of the theory, to best put it, is that depending on the context, it refers to a capitalist ideology, a communist theory of change, any form of white nationalist terrorism. The deduction here is that it's verified with the relevant clarification that, as explained, accelerationism is a theory that has been interpreted in various ways throughout history. The research question focused on 1, that history, and 2, its interpretation and use by the extreme far right, white supremacists, and neo-Nazis as referenced in the episode. The last thing in terms of this subject that I feel like is worth noting is towards the end of this quote, Mars gets into the fact of how we're seeing the current administration, quote, attempt to sort of trample those institutions and trample those checks and balances. And we're seeing kind of them getting away with it. In terms of relation of like acceleration to Trump, there is evidence and research to connect these. Specifically, this quote, the rhetoric and actions of Donald Trump while president were in the author's assessment a key factor in the coalescing of the inclusive accelerationist network. The extreme far right does not typically synchronize, however, Trump provided a central nexus of the force of gravity that pulls them all into alignment. I'm going to end on number 19 here, where Cal is asking, so oligarchy is how you would define, the current structure of the United States government. And Mars says, that's how Mr. Sanders would describe us. This is a quote from Bernie Sanders' YouTube channel. He's talking about A bill, I believe, that was basically about to be passed from his perspective. He says, but then out of nowhere, the wealthiest man in the world, Elon Musk, began tweeting his opposition to this legislation. He told Republicans that if they voted for this proposal, which they had already agreed to do, he would take out his wallet and spend as much money as it took to defeat them in primaries and drive them out of office. Appreciate what's going on here. The wealthiest person in the world, who spent at least $277 million to elect Donald Trump and a Republican Congress, has now claimed complete ownership of that party. What we are looking at here has nothing to do with democracy. What we are looking at here is oligarchy. And with that, thank you for bearing with me. Thank you for listening to the second episode of Think Tank. And I do encourage y'all to go check out the full document or just explore things on your own, as I cannot stress enough that this was simply a survey. See y'all next time.